World TB Day is held on March 24th each year. It's a moment when we acknowledge the burden of tuberculosis around the world and also celebrate the accomplishments of people who are fighting against it. And today we have a very special announcement. I'm going to turn the floor to Dr. Marcos Espinal, who's the Executive Secretary of the Stop TB Partnership, who will be introducing our new Goodwill Ambassador against tuberculosis.
It is a great pleasure for me to introduce today Craig David as the new Goodwill Ambassador to fight TB. Craig doesn't need introduction. It's a success story that we call a success story in TB. Craig is multi-platinum laureate, basically. He has achieved success in several countries globally, and he is lending his voice today to help, not to help us, but to help the people affected by tuberculosis. Some of you may ask why. Well, the Stop TB Partnership is a social movement. It's a global movement that aims to control tuberculosis, to achieve the Millennium Development Goals, but also to eliminate TB. And some of you may ask, TB is a disease of the past. You are completely wrong. TB today is a huge pandemic, killing 1.8 million people every year globally. There are 9 million new cases of tuberculosis every year. More importantly, 2 billion people, 1/3 of the world population, is infected with the bacteria, with the bug that causes tuberculosis. So to help us to take the message that TB is a responsibility of all the people of the world, not only governments, but civil society, private sector, the students, people affected by the disease. Craig David has decided to give his image, his time, his voice, to advocate and to raise awareness that we can conquer this disease, and if we all have the will. Why we can conquer this disease? Because it's a curable disease. TB can be cured. There is treatment available. And when I said curable, I also feel sad, because to me, tuberculosis is a human disgrace. It's a reflection of our own failure to control a disease that has been with us for 4,000 years. TB has been proven to exist even in Egyptian mummies, and still we have tuberculosis today. 9 million new people, ladies and gentlemen. It's an airborne disease. Nobody is exempt from getting TB. We are all at risk. And you all know that TB is not going to be controlled or eliminated if we all don't do this together. And that is the reason Craig is joining forces today with the Stop TB Partnership, but more importantly, again, to help those who are sick, to give hope to those who are today in many countries affected by this human tragedy, by this social problem, by this development problem, because TB is not a medical problem, it's a development issue. It's an economic problem. It's a human rights situation. Having said all this, I just wanted to pass the micro to Craig so he can introduce himself. He can tell you a little bit what he's going to do on the fight against TB, not without thanking Craig personally for agreeing to do this and to lend his voice and his image, his time, without any cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi. Thank you very much. I mean, for me, to be honest, to be involved with something that you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, with HIV and AIDS, which there's been a lot of interest and obviously awareness made through a lot of different musicians, Bono being one of them, who's reached millions of people and made people very aware of how deadly and the importance of that problem. But to know that, as you said, 1.8 million people dying every year of tuberculosis, for me touched me, and especially being 28 years old and being very close friends with Luis Figo, which is how I originally became aware with tuberculosis. It was a charity event, and him being a Goodwill Ambassador for the prevention of tuberculosis. The speech that he gave, and also the montage, the video montage that I watched, it made me feel like I could actually make a difference because of the virtue of the platform that I've been given through being a musician. I've been able to reach millions of people through my music. It's a platform that I can make awareness and touch people that maybe a doctor or a politician may not be able to reach. And at the same time, to know that my voice can really be heard in something that is curable. And that makes me feel like I can see, like I said, the light at the end of the tunnel, and know that if I can experience meeting people and experience who experienced it firsthand, which is what I did recently by going over to South Africa, I wanted to understand rather than just looking at statistics, because people aren't statistics. And I've recognized that it's very easy to be sitting at home, and I'm very blessed for the lifestyle that I've been given through my music, to sit back and watch what's going on around the world and not necessarily do anything about it. And everyone can donate money, but when it comes to actually being privileged to be in a position where I can actually make a difference through stepping up on a platform and speaking to people, I felt like I needed to firsthand go to a place that was suffering, and South Africa being one of the third biggest countries in the world suffering from tuberculosis, to know that I could meet researchers who could explain to me about the research process and how they're trying to shorten the duration and period of time that it takes if you're diagnosed with tuberculosis, which is a 6-month course of 2 types of antibiotics, which a 6-month course taking 2 types of antibiotics every single day religiously is a task in itself. Now, after the 2-3 weeks of being diagnosed and taking the course, you're not infectious anymore, but at the point at which you stop taking any of the antibiotics because you miss a day, or for whatever the lifestyle that you're leading is not allowing you to take that course, means you can easily build up a multiple resistance to tuberculosis. And then a 6-month course now could easily be 2 years. And the cost of $20 for a course of 6 months treatment can escalate into $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 per person. So to have the opportunity to work with people who've been working very hard for many years to fight tuberculosis, and be in a privileged position to be able to reach people, having been to South Africa and meeting different age groups, people who have been affected by it differently, and knowing there's such a stigma within society, and almost the unknown about tuberculosis and the effects it causes. Within South Africa, in the communities there, having spoken to community workers who are dealing with people firsthand, the problem is that there's a stigma attached with the lower immune system that you have to have contracted tuberculosis is very much hand in hand with HIV, which therefore is giving people the stigma within they don't want to go to a clinic to be diagnosed, even if they have the symptoms, which is 2 weeks coughing and not getting any better, having sweats at night for long periods of time. So for me to make awareness and to say to a child who actually touched me when I was in South Africa, in Cape Town, a young girl stepped up and she was like 12 years old, and in front of a classroom of the same age group, was confident enough to say that she'd contracted tuberculosis through no fault of her own, through her adults, through her parents, through her uncle and her mother, which, for me, the responsibility does lie, obviously, within the adults who are putting their children in a situation in South Africa to be contracting tuberculosis. But for her to stand up and be confident enough to say, well, I knew I had the symptoms were very clear to me. I went to the teacher, I told her, I did a 6-month course of the medication, and now I'm tuberculosis free. It was simple, but if she hadn't have had the confidence to do that, that could have turned into a problem where she lost her life. And to know that I can have the possibility of saving people's lives through my voice of music is why I'm here today. That's why I'm very happy to now become a Goodwill Ambassador, because I feel very passionate about this, and I can see, like you said, it's crazy to think that even in the developed world, this is still very prevalent. You know, I mean, we talk about third world countries and places in Europe, but in terms of knowing that in New York there's cases of tuberculosis within the poor and homeless. In London, it is the highest charting of tuberculosis in Western Europe, which, for me, living in London, I find very surprising. The resources are very limited in being able to do it. The diagnosis has almost been kind of left on the basis of, well, you know, many years ago we've sorted tuberculosis. There's been a vaccine for it, which most people who've had the vaccine have still contracted tuberculosis. The vaccine's you would tell me is 100 years old now.
Yeah.
So yes, we're looking for a vaccine, but it's more about resources and being able to deal with the problem firsthand. So I'm happy to be part of this, and hopefully I can make awareness over the places I travel to the stages I perform on, to the millions of people I reach through being on TV, and hopefully make the larger importance of governments funding domestic countries within their own countries and making the importance of tuberculosis, because for it to be overlooked is one of the biggest problems which we're facing, because we're seeing the curve of tuberculosis starting to reach back up in developed countries and obviously in the third world countries as well. So.